Currently a senior UX designer at Bell. My current focus right now is working on multi-brand design systems for the Bell and Virgin mobile apps. And before that, I studied psychology at Dalhousie University. And from there, I kind of just stumbled upon UX design by chance. And my interest in human behavior and psychology, it kind of seemed like a cool blend, a really cool career path to pursue.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Design Hat podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us, Vincent, and he is a senior UX designer at Bell. He has amazing experience. He has been mentoring people for a long time. He has even grabbed more than 1,000 minutes of mentorship at ADP List. And today we're going to talk about his journey, how he has grown to this role, and more about him. So let me get him on stage and introduce. Hey Vincent, how are you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great as well. So let's just start the podcast with a bit of introduction and then we'll get into it.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Sure. Can you just introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Vincent. I'm currently a senior UX designer at Bell. My current focus right now is working on design systems, specifically multi-brand design systems for the Bell and Virgin mobile apps. And before that, my background in education is actually psychology. So I studied psychology at Dalhousie University. And from there, I kind of just stumbled upon UX design by chance. And my interest in human behavior and psychology, it kind of seemed like a cool blend where I could kind of mix that interest as well as my interests in technology. And so it just seemed like a really cool career path to pursue, and did a bit more digging and watched a lot of videos and decided to pursue a boot camp, 3-month boot camp where I got a certificate in UX design. And then from there, worked a few jobs at agencies, small startups, as well as a bit bigger companies where I was a solo designer. And here I am today at Bell, which is a bit of a larger enterprise company. So that's kind of like my journey in a nutshell.
Awesome. And that sounds really interesting. I think how you transition from the psychology point of view to the UX design and obviously getting into the bigger brands as well. So let's just start from the beginning. I think getting a little deeper dive into how kind of you got drew into the design world, how kind of you decided that I want to take that leap of faith from psychology to design. That's how was the transition?
Yeah, I think nearing the last 2 years of my bachelor's degree, I had to make a decision if I wanted to continue pursuing a career in psychology, which meant, doing a master's, PhD, and also psychology has a lot of different sub branches. So I had to kind of figure out where I really wanted to go. And I felt like I hadn't really been guided by anyone. And I didn't really take it upon myself to try to figure that out. And ultimately, I just kind of figured academia wasn't what I was interested in continuing to pursue. I, as much as I liked the idea of it, I kind of was eager to get out and just start working in whatever it was. So after I graduated, I just decided maybe it might be a good idea to take some time and just work, try to pay off that student debt and maybe try a few different things out. Maybe I would discover something along the way, which ultimately I did. So I decided to, bartend for a couple of years, which was quite a fun experience, and it was great money. I got to meet a lot of people, both people I worked with as well as customers, regular customers, and just getting to chat with people was really cool, hearing their stories. So that was really fun. And at the same time, I was able to travel a bit and again, just do some reflection. For a little while, I had considered going into education, into teaching. And I just, like I said, I kind of stumbled upon UX one day. I was looking up, what else could someone do with a psychology degree? And that's where I saw a job posting for UX. And like I said earlier, I've always been a bit of a tech geek. I've always, love watching YouTube videos on the latest tech. And so that fascination with my interest in, cognitive sciences and how we perceive the world, to me, that just seems like a really cool opportunity to kind of blend those interests. And yeah, it was a really interesting moment because I did have, like you said, I had to take a leap of faith and decide, if I'm going to pursue this, I really have to commit to it, which is a difficult thing to do when you don't have any experience working in that field. All I had really done was watch videos of people, the day in the life as a designer, and sometimes that doesn't always paint an accurate picture of what that's like. So I had kind of weighed my options in terms of education, and ultimately I decided to do the boot camp because of how short it was. And I kind of wanted to just immerse myself in fully and hopefully get into the job market right away. Unfortunately, right after I graduated, the pandemic hit. So I was starting out in my career and looking really for any opportunity that came my way. And at that point, I had a lot of moments where I just kind of wanted to give up and maybe move on. But at that point, I kind of told myself I would, as soon as I signed up for the course, I said, I'm going to see this through at least for a few years. I'm not going to give up without even getting a job. Right. So I was very, very adamant about pursuing that. And like you said, taking a leap of faith. So that was a very interesting period. And especially with remote work, that was all happening at the same time. So yeah, I think maybe in some way the pandemic may have helped me because my options were very limited. I kind of needed to do something that was remote. And I had a lot of time on my hands to do a lot of self-learning, taking other online, LinkedIn courses or Udemy courses, and just constantly trying to reinforce what I had learned in school. So yeah, in some way you can say that the pandemic kind of helped. But yeah, ultimately it was a leap of faith, like you said.
That's interesting. I think you kind of dig deep into how your trajectory kind of changed from figuring out what you really liked, and I think that is very relatable to not just me, but I think a lot of designers who would be watching it. Like, I think that's what we start. We really like tech. We really like seeing latest trends and everything, and then we kind of figure out how people would perceive it from outside view, and that's kind of got us into this. But I think that is really interesting. And going to the next one, I think you have kind of become, or you're kind of known, as you said, you're working as a multi-brand design system guy. And so how would you say, like, you kind of developed that niche, or is it something that you just got into, or the career got into, took you into? Like, what would you say kind of you enjoyed the most about working around design systems?
Yeah, design systems. I love working in design systems. I love talking about design systems, and I would say it started probably the second company I worked for, which was a small startup that was primarily focused in. I think it was at the time they've shifted their models, but I think it was a lot of AR projects at the time. And ultimately, what happened was we had multiple designers on one team, and we had a lot of different projects in a lot of different industries. And everyone was sort of working in silos. All the designers, we were kind of doing our own thing and trying to create our own identity of, using things like style guides and brand colors. There wasn't much beyond logos and colors. And you would kind of be taken off of one project to go help another designer out. And oftentimes it was a mess. I found that, we would spend so much time over tedious design decisions that really didn't make a difference, I thought, in the user's experience, which was, like, I don't know, the corner radius of a button. And we had so many different variations of a single button, which to me seemed useless, right? We weren't spending the time focusing on solving the problems. We were spending time on these simple UI decisions that really didn't make a big difference. So at the time, I suggested to my manager, my design manager, maybe we can take some time, do an audit of all of these projects we've worked on, and come together and at least create like some sort of like UI kit. Because at the time we didn't even have that. So that was sort of like the first time that I really decided this is something I'd like to kind of continue pursuing. And I had at the time discovered what a design system actually was while trying to create this UI kit. And again, it wasn't a design system necessarily, but at least having a UI kit and having some rules and some consistency over, things like tabs or buttons and style or typography styles, that already was such a game changer. And because we were moving around from project to project, it helped a lot, and it helped our developers as well. Even though they didn't turn into developed components, it really helped us maintain some consistency and kind of hop on and off different projects and collaborate. So that was the first time I really fell in love with the idea of a design system. And then every company I've worked for since, I've sort of tried to push for it. The last company I worked for, I was the only designer, and there was a lot of advocating for design processes. I was trying to run workshops and facilitate them to sort of introduce what a UX designer really does to other people in the company. And that was also for me an opportunity to suggest like, hey, maybe we should also have a design system. So I was always trying to push it everywhere I was working. And right now with Bell, luckily I was actually hired specifically to work on the design system. So to me, that was like a perfect opportunity I couldn't turn down. And yeah, I mean, it is quite niche, but I think most designers, regardless of if you've contributed to a design system or you work on it full time, I think everyone sees the value in it. Obviously, you need to leave some room for creativity, and we can always, I can go into a long monologue about how I think, design systems should be a balance of creativity and consistency. But yeah, I think ultimately it kind of started there, and just having some consistency and being able to collaborate easier with designers and developers.
No, makes sense. I think I totally agree. Even in my last company that I worked, uh, I started as a solo designer, and then we grew our design team. And I think I realized the same thing. I think one of the biggest thing we realized is the collaboration with developer becomes much more easier and smoother.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think what you said about bringing the balance between creativity and that and consistency is really important, because not everything can be in like can go through design system, I would say, in a way. Like, you have to bring that creativity in the whole process as well. But that sounds really interesting, and I think that is something every designer should know about, or should kind of advocate for, because that is a positive impact towards the business and the user itself.
Mhm.
uh, so I think going on, I think you said your career, I think, has been an amazing journey, and it's more of like a movie where you kind of started as a bartender, then I think I read somewhere as a tree planter, and I think growing, you kind of now are mentoring aspiring designers as well. So I think I just want to know how these things have influenced you to grow as a designer now.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, because ultimately, every experience we've had, whether it's working experience or education, everything shapes who we are as a professional, as an individual. And even though certain roles that I've had in my past, like tree planting or landscaping or bartending, when I was transitioning into UX, I found it really difficult to sell myself with these very different experiences that to me, I found a hard time relating to the field of design. But I think ultimately, you can always find something that has helped or, shape who you are as a designer, whether it be, attention to detail. So, I did a summer of tree planting where we would be planting thousands of trees per day, and we would have 2 rounds of inspectors come and make sure that your trees were tight enough in the ground, deep enough, and straight enough. And it had to pass both rounds, or else you would have to go back and plant for free the following week or the following day or whatever it was. So sometimes I like to look at that experience as the first time that I really started to care about you know details and quality of my work. So that might seem like a stretch, but I really do believe that. And then bartending, for example, I thought as much as I like to think of myself as an introvert, but also an extrovert at times, I found the working in a restaurant setting was a really great opportunity for me to just feel comfortable talking to and listening to different people from all walks of life, and getting to kind of relate to them a little bit. And I think that's really important, not just in design, but in a lot of fields, is having empathy for people, being able to communicate. I think those are really, really important tools for a designer as well. But yeah, and then with mentorship, I think that was something that I didn't even really realize was a tool that was available to me, specifically the ADP list platform, when I was starting out. So when I started to use the platform myself as a mentor or as a mentee, I really found value in it. And I realized this is something I would have really liked when I was starting my career. And sometimes you just kind of need to talk to someone in the field and make sure that you're not going crazy, and that you're not alone in whatever you're experiencing. So I really wanted to share that with other designers, and I really enjoy connecting with them and hearing their stories. And everyone has a very unique background and challenges, and each company is very different, right? So I think it's really great to get to connect with those designers and to offer them some sort of guidance in their work and their careers. That's been really, really rewarding. So that's something that has helped me, I think, also as a designer to be able to communicate, with aspiring designers, and try to share my experiences, things I would have liked to have told myself when I was starting out. So yeah, it's something I continue to do, and it's just very, very rewarding. Yeah.
That's interesting to hear, because I think what you told about how these experiences kind of have shaped you as a designer, I think, and also how you feel mentoring is something, in a way, kind of giving back to the society, because where you felt like you struggled, you want to help others to kind of bridge that gap. But I think I am really, when I kind of got to know like you had a bartending experience, I even am fascinated about it. I really want to learn someday, but I'm really fascinated about it because uh, I am an anime fan, and I think and my list is to watch one of the animes about bartending. It's called Glass of God, and it's around how that bartender kind of reads the person, knows their story, and makes a drink which makes the person feel content.
Mhm.
So that's something really interesting to me uh, around that. And uh, I think all these experiences everybody has, even small as, I think, being even as a tree planter, or even I don't know, somebody would be a chef or somebody would be something else. These experiences kind of play a big role in how you think or perceive the world, or your experiences. I think that really matters. Uh,
Yeah, and I think, and just to, if I can add to that, I think when I was starting out my boot camp in UX, there were a lot of people who, first of all, already had experience in the field. Second of all, had degrees in design or graphic design. And that to me, I felt very intimidated. I felt like an imposter. I think we all kind of do. Never really goes away. But I think learning about other people's experiences, you don't just have to have a background in graphic design to become a designer. There's much more than that, right? And depending on your background, you might specialize in something else, or whether it's design systems or motion design or UX research, whatever it might be. I think it's really interesting to see how people's backgrounds might shape their future. So yeah, I think it only helps you to have a more diverse background. Um, yeah.
Agreed. I think agreed, and I think that is something, like, it's not something I would say people should push for if they don't have it, but if they have it, it's always something in a positive direction.
Yeah.
Uh, but that's interesting. I think going forward, I want to know, like, you kind of covered this up, but just if you can kind of brief about it. So you are a super mentor and like have logged around 1,000 mentorship minutes, even more than that, I feel. What do you say you kind of enjoy the most about mentoring people, and like how, I think as I said, you kind of covered this up, like how has that helped you kind of grow as a designer, but what do you think you really enjoyed the most doing it?
Well, I think one thing I've really enjoyed is establishing a relationship with some of the mentees that I've mentored. Some of them have had many sessions with me. Some of them weekly, sometimes monthly. And what I've really enjoyed is getting to kind of watch their career unfold. And some people had just graduated from school, and then they were on the looking for their first job, and now they're looking for their second job, and I think it's really cool to watch that, from an outsider. It's really cool to see how people grow, and to be able to play some small role in that. Obviously, I can't take any credit for their hard work, but it's just really great to get to talk to them and also share my experiences, right? And like I said, it's something that I would have taken advantage of when I was starting out. So I really like to advocate it to people who aren't aware of it, especially since some of these platforms are free to use. You don't have to pay for it, so you have the opportunity to connect with a lot of amazing designers who have a lot of great insights to share. So yeah, and then for myself, I think it's just been really not just rewarding, but it's been really great for me to talk about my journey and my experiences, because it's allowed me to also reflect on my experiences and to kind of pick out different lessons I may have learned along the way. And they're not just something that I can share with other people, they're also a great reminder to myself. I don't journal or anything, but I find that to me it's almost like journaling. I'm sharing my experiences with others, and also some of their experiences are very similar to mine, right? So I think it's just really important to connect with other designers, to talk to them, to hear about their challenges. And oftentimes it doesn't matter if they're starting out or if they have years of experience. Oftentimes we face the same problems, right? So I learn just as much as the mentees learn from our sessions, I find. So that's what's really great about it.
No, totally makes sense. I think that is something really, there's something obviously really content about when you share your own journey, you reflect back of where you are from where you were, and that's something really, there's something really powerful about it. Now going forward, I really want to know, because you have transitioned from being, as I said, from a bartender to a production assistant to a tree planter to XYZ. So I think to a to now a role as a senior UX designer, I want to know what challenges kind of you faced during that shift, and how did you kind of overcame it?
I think the biggest one is probably the one that a lot of people have experienced, which is sort of the imposter syndrome. I know a lot of people have talked about it. And I think the reality is that, like I said, it doesn't really go away. And I remember there was this one, I think it was a TED talk by a designer. I think his name was Pablo. He's a pretty well-known designer. I forget his last name, Pablo something. And he kind of sheds like light on the idea that none of us really know what we're doing, and to fake it till you make it. And obviously that's not entirely true. I think, there's a lot of talent out there. We're not all faking it. But to me, that just helped me take the pressure off myself, and to stop looking at others' work as competition or comparing it to my own, but really looking at it and being proud of their work and their achievements and letting it inspire me, as opposed to looking at it and being like, oh, that's on another level. I could never design that, or their problem solving skills are way beyond mine. I think that was something that really helped me, I think, grow as a designer and to have the confidence to, in my own abilities as well. So I would say in the very beginning, yeah, it was just a matter of like, okay, I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. A lot of the work I'm going to do in the beginning is not going to be my best. But the good news is that it's going to continue to get better every day, as long as I keep trying to educate myself. I keep trying to, cater my news feeds to, different designers, follow different designers on YouTube or on LinkedIn or whatever social media platform you use. I think to me, that was something that helped a lot, was to just expose myself to it. And as opposed to constantly trying to sign up for new classes or new certificates, that's great. But that feels like, you're trying to catch up still, and you have to educate yourself more. Whereas like when you're catering your feeds, it feels very natural. Like, we spend so much time on our phones and our computers that if you kind of make it, so you put it in your own face that way, I find that, it just becomes natural. You immerse yourself in it. And as a result, a lot of that information is repeated, it's reinforced, it's retained, and then you're able to use it. So I think in the very beginning of my career, transitioning, that was really what helped me, I think, was just immersing myself in it. And yeah, and being inspired by others and not, comparing myself to others.
Totally makes sense. I think the talk that you were mentioning was by, I think, Pablo Stanley.
Yeah.
He's a very great, yeah, he's a very great designer. I think I really liked the talk that he gave about imposter syndrome similarly. And I think another point I would say, I think I really believe by the quote, like, comparison is the thief of joy. Even though, to be honest, like, I'm still figuring out how to not do it, but I think it's a human nature that you start comparing yourself. How you take it, that's the important point. As you said, like, if you just started saying it as like, where they are, I can never be
Mhm.
there. It's I think rather than that, you should see it in a way that either how did they got there, what should I learn from them, what they did differently. I think i think my next question kind of aligns with what you just said. Let's just jump right into it. I think you describe as saying yourself as a naturally curious person. I think, how do you keep that curiosity kind of alive, and what do you think kind of it aligns with what you just said about
Yeah.
dealing with imposter syndrome, and especially with this fast evolving kind of field? How do you think that being a naturally curious person kind of helps you?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on it earlier, but really it is about immersing yourself and always trying to stay up to date with this fast evolving field, right? And oftentimes when I'm watching, videos on the newest trends, or, whatever it might be, a new iOS software updates, whatever it might be. When I see those things, it will inspire me, and it will kind of set something like a fire in me to, try to get better and to learn more. And so I think the curiosity I have about, how can I become a better designer, or, how can I improve, yeah, my own processes. As a result, yeah, I think I just immerse myself, and it kind of helps spark that creativity. It helps keep me inspired to continue, because sometimes you can feel stagnant in what you're doing, especially when you're working for a company, right? Sometimes it feels like you are not, maybe you're plateauing or whatever it might be, right? So it's really important to, stay curious, and, to look at what other people are doing. And like you said, how can I learn from what they've done? How did they get here? That is just ultimately going to make you a better designer, and help you to adapt to, all the changes. So I think, yeah, that's kind of how I deal with it.
No, makes sense. I think everybody has different take on it, and I think being curious is something. I think it's a part of being a designer in a way. Now I feel like if you have to be curious, you have to be creative, you have to think of the why and other things behind things, and that's the only way you're gonna, I think, grow. But I think that's a really interesting point. So let's jump into a fun round of the podcast. So I this is what we call a rapid round, and after that I have another question, and then we'll be good. So just a fun round, and I will just ask you maybe a question, quick question, or maybe give you two choices. You just choose from one. If you want to explain them, that's up to you. But quick ones. So, are you a Figma guy or a Sketch?
Oh, I'm a Figma guy.
Yeah,
Haven't been a sketch guy since like 2019.
true, true.
Yeah,
It's been a long time. I have even
I
used
know.
it. What do you think is a one design tool that you cannot live without?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to not say Figma. But if I had to think of something else besides Figma, because it's an obvious answer, um, I mean, I do use Notion quite a bit, just
Mm,
for my own personal brain, I find.
true.
So just documenting meeting notes, or ideas, whatever it might be, design decisions. Ideally, you want to share those with the team, but sometimes there's just things that you need to keep to yourself, and that doesn't have to be Notion. It could be any note taking, but I find it's just like the one-stop shop for me. So um, besides Figma, that would probably be the second.
No, makes sense. I think I would have said the same answer, or either a Adobe Premiere Pro, because I'm a big geek on video editing. But I
Nice.
think I use Notion for everything. To be really honest, I think if I have it here, I will have it on Notion. That's the
Yes.
same logic I follow. Uh, the next one. So if you weren't a designer, what would you be doing?
Oof. Yeah, I don't know. I think I've always loved the film industry, and I did work one summer as a production assistant, and my dad worked in the film industry. I love movies. I love the behind the scenes. I think that I probably would have pursued that. Um, Either that, or yeah, I don't know. I probably that I would say that's to me, it was just the hours was one thing that I didn't like the idea of, working long hours and night shifts. I remember my dad used to come home sometimes, all all hours of the day, and leave, same thing, like leave at you know uh, 8 p.m. and come back at 8 a.m. So yeah, very inconsistent schedule, but I love it. I love the idea of being part of a production, and in a way, there's some sort of similarities with design, right? It's like a project. There's a lot of people working on it, and eventually it comes to life and as a living, breathing thing. So, yeah.
No, I think I totally agree. Even for me, if I would have to choose, I would have gone into somewhat film industry. I don't know where, but somewhat film industry, because I never explored too much. I fortunately I started my career as a cinematographer.
Oh,
I I shot, I think I've shot 6 short films, even in my early careers, and that's how I started my creative field. But I totally agree. I think one of the biggest takeaways that I've taken from my cinematography experience, I would say, storytelling. I think that
mhm.
that has been really important for me. How to keep engaging users in a story where they believe they are the characters, I would say.
Mm,
So
mhm.
that has been really interesting for me.
Yeah.
Uh, what would you say? You are a night person or a morning person?
I'd like to think that I'm a morning person. I don't know if I am. I love the mornings. I love slow mornings. I find that if I had the choice, I would prefer to design at night. I don't know what it is about all the lights being dimmed low, and the creative juices seem to flow better for me at night than in the morning. So yeah, I think in general, I like the morning, but like a slow morning. But for work, I'm more of a night person.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh, what would you say is your go-to design inspiration source?
Yeah, that's a good one. Some recently, something I've found a lot of value in is Mobin, which is what I like about it is you get to not only see screenshots from a bunch of existing products, successful products, but what I love about it is they also categorize or group screens in terms of like user flows. So oftentimes, if you're working on a feature, um, and you're trying to look at, how another competitor does it or how other people have solved that similar problem, I think it's really a great source of inspiration to see, how it's already being implemented versus, seeing going on Dribble, for example. Like nothing against Dribble. It's great for like UI inspiration, I find, but sometimes when you need to actually find inspiration for an existing solution, that's a great place to go. Also, just YouTube. I'm a big YouTube guy, so there's a few people that I'll follow, and I'm subscribed to. One of them, I think a lot of people probably heard of him, but Mizco, I really like his videos. He shares some really great insights, not just about design, but about running a successful business, and he has, I think, a really wide range of knowledge that as a designer who might one day want to start their own business or agency or whatever it might be, I find like he has a lot of valuable insights. So that's one person in particular I'll keep going to for inspiration. But when it comes to inspiration for design, problem solving, Mobin kind of seems like an easy one for anyone to just kind of get like some quick ideas.
Makes sense. The last one. So, what would you say is your biggest UX pet peeve?
Oh God. Um, UX pet peeve. I mean, there's a couple, I guess. Um, this is maybe more of like a UI kind of thing, or I guess UX in some ways, but messy files. That's really tough. I think using groups when you should be using frames in Figma. Um, but I think also having other people who aren't designers give design input. Not that it's not just because you're not a designer you can't give design input. It's input on things that are very meaningless, I think, right? Like, oh, can we make that border radius a bit more round, or can we, and then you end up in conversation, like a 30-minute conversation just talking about the border radius of something, or the color of a button, or whatever it might be, the size of a logo, which isn't really helpful for anyone. So yeah, that's probably another one.
No, I think I agree. I have so many funny stories in my last company, just advocating how a design looks when there's no reason. Like I think it's a lot of time it's even personal preference.
Yeah,
People try to bring on the design decisions made, not backing it with XYZ. Like if they would say, let's change the CTA text to something else, there might be some backing, but just changing the
sure.
border radius, well, that would be that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it all comes down to being able to back your design decisions. So if someone has a proposition, whether it's because of like backed by like a business requirement, or whatever it might be, user research, by all means, or that's I'm all ears. But if it's just a personal preference, sometimes people will say like, oh, it looks weird. Well, that doesn't really tell me much. But yeah, that's
True. I agree. I agree. Okay, so the last one. So this is a big one. So I think you have gone through a big journey of yours, and I think I wanna get back uh, together. So, looking back at your journey so far, what would you say is one piece of advice you would like to give to your younger self who is kind of starting out in design, who have just got in design and kind of looking out? What would you say is one or two pieces of advice that you would give to them?
Yeah, I think the first one would be to immerse yourself in it. I know I've said that a few times, but really, cater your feeds to different designers, find different, leaders in the field that really you resonate with and that you like listening to. And just make it, yeah, really surround yourself with it. Go to, don't be afraid to sign up for like a meetup or a conference. That's kind of scares people sometimes, but I think as soon as you do that, you really feel like you're part of the community. And I think that's a great way when you're starting out to stay inspired, right? Or otherwise you feel alone. So I think that's a really valuable piece of advice I would have given myself. And then practicing, just practice, 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 whether it's a personal project or like you thought of like a small problem that that you'd like to try to solve. Go for it. Spend a couple hours. Doesn't have to be a huge project. It doesn't even have to be a digital project. If get used to trying to solve problems, right? Even if it's designing a space like your living room or whatever it might be, right? The way you organize your room, or fold your clothes and arrange your dresser, like those are all little things that you can do in your life that I think they seem like meaningless or that they wouldn't really help, but I think they really are great practice for you to start, thinking like a designer and start thinking about everything having purpose in your life, right? So that's another one. And then maybe the last one would just be reiterating what I was saying earlier about, letting yourself be inspired by the work of others, and instead of comparing it to yourself. And like you mentioned, trying to understand what they did, why it's good, why it resonates with you and others, right? And try to figure out what your strengths are, really. And that might take a bit of time. You might not know right away. For example, when I started out, I didn't think that I would have any interest in not necessarily UI design, but just that whole visual part of design kind of scared me. And I thought I was going to lean more towards like research, which I love. I do love research when I get to participate in it. But I think I've really kind of pivoted a bit closer, especially with design systems, to interaction design, to working very closely with developers, especially what I do right now. So yeah, I would say 3 pieces of advice: immerse yourself in it, practice, and just let yourself be inspired by others, and don't take it too seriously. It's okay if you mess up, or if your designs aren't great. You just have to move on, and it's going to be better the next time. What could you have improved last time, right? So yeah.
Totally makes sense. I think these were really actionable kind of advice that anybody who's listening kind of take on. But yeah, thanks a lot. I think these were all the questions that I had. Thanks a lot, Vincent, kind of taking out the time and contributing. And hopefully, I think the people who are watching kind of get a lot out from this conversation. And I will definitely link your socials in the descriptions for anybody who would want to kind of reach out to you, or maybe I think book a session through ADP List as well. So I think that would be really great. So yeah,
Perfect. Well, thanks, Abe. It was great discussing these topics with you, and thanks for having me on the podcast.
awesome.